Chapter 7, But I Will Have Nothing Left, Letting Go of This Earth. When it's quiet, where does your mind wander? Is it to the list of things that bring you happiness, or to the photos etched in your heart of loving people? Is it the struggle to keep up with the stress of life? Well, sometimes it's all at the same time. Sometimes life just takes all the energy out of your heart. Sometimes to just think about moving hurts every muscle in your body thinking about it. Learning the discipline of serving and loving people will take everything out of your heart and leave you empty. At the same time, it will fill you to overflowing, and you can't imagine how you could feel so fulfilled and exhausted at the same time. It's those moments when you let your mind wander in the depth of the night, you truly find out if you serve and love people, you're going to have nothing left. That is, if you're totally 100% all out for how God wants you to love people. Loving people is not a percentage of your day. Serving others isn't something you fit in between the dentist and picking up kids from school. Loving and serving changes your mindset, your calendar, and your emotions. So when your mind wanders at night, what do you think of? The people who take up your time. They say that the loops in our brain start when we are young. The older we are, the longer the loops form. The more we do something, the stronger the loop. That's why older people can remember when they were 10 but can't tell you what they had for lunch. From the time they were 10, the loop has been looping. Lunch, there wasn't enough time for the loop to loop. When you think about where you spend your time, what do you think about? If you spend your time on golf course, well, that's where your mind's going to be. If you spend your mind shopping, well, that's where your mind will meander. But if you spend your time loving and serving others, that's where you find your heart returning to time and time again. People, moments, tears, laughter, jokes that really weren't funny. Sad moments that were hands held together to get through, and things that maybe only two people on earth will understand, but those two get it. Often the giving comes with a comparison sheet. If I give, then I will have nothing left. Our way of keeping track of serving and loving is so earthly. God's way of putting thoughts into our hearts to love people goes far beyond the limits of our imagination. I have nothing left to give. Well, God says, how about this way of looking at loving? Loving and giving is conditional on what other people need. We serve and give based on what we think people need. That limits how God can work. But when we take our hands off the plan and let God rewrite the script, it's got punchlines in the right places, and the ending is always perfect. Relationships form because of common interest, and relationships develop as common interest adds time. Time plus common interest combines to form community. Community breeds familiarity, and eventually familiarity creates bonds. Some people don't hang around long enough to get that community part. Others get involved in the community part and find out that other people who seemed normal at first are now weird. They have their own ideas and it doesn't match yours, and they have opinions that are disgusting, and they burp. They don't get social clues like, go home, we're tired of you. Community is living life together. And often people get frustrated because of the odd belief that community should revolve around them. When community becomes a bit divisive, they walk out. If I don't get my own way, I ain't gonna stay. Then there are people who go from the community part to bonding, and they feel that in Scoop, they have established time and what leads up to bonding. There's something about time. Well, they say time heals all wounds, but it's bigger than healing wounds. Time creates memories and builds trust. When a heart walks through the fire with a friend, there's nothing a friend won't do in return. It's simple. Time plus effort equals relationship. Some put in the time but no effort, and then wonder why no one clicks with them. Some put in the effort but won't let time develop, and they get frustrated and walk out. It's related to developing film. Okay, remember back in the Middle Ages when we would put this little black container in our camera, and on the very edge was a piece of gray plastic sitting out with notches. You lined up the notches on the inside of your camera, used the advancer to move the film, and shut the door. After a few more clicks to firm the film, you took pictures. When the number of photos allowed for the length of film was over, you would drop them off or mail them to a processor. Maybe, if you were lucky, 10 days later, they would have processed, printed, and mailed back your photos. It took time. Even if you had your own darkroom, it took time. We live in an instant gratification culture. I want it now. From the drive-thru at McDonald's and Caribou Coffee to no one waiting at Hy-Vee, we want the speedy lane to wherever we're going. Relationships take time. Listening takes time. Spending time doing nothing takes time. But those three things combine to build trust and establish what the most important part of community is. It's living life together. For me, it's always been about loving people. It hasn't always been that way, but it has become a passion and drive before they put me under to love as many people as I can. Well, I'm not picky. It would be the people I love that I'm not picky. I can be a real nutcase, a whack job in 1 minute, be clear and concise, The next minute, I can ramble for a country mile. But love doesn't really care about that stuff, and relationships just work around the quirks we have. They say sacrifice isn't for sissies. Sacrifice often isn't on a sunny day with happy thoughts. One of those sacrifices was a cold day in February. My first graveside service with a guitar, a gusty wind, and not enough people to form a good wind block. I always said, if you go to a football game and it's cold and breezy, sit by the largest person you can find and they'll break the wind. It was a day that I felt totally out of my element, but it was where God wanted me. My fingers can still feel the cold. I saved the talk and the prayer, and he touched me, and it will always remind me of trying to sing through chattered teeth. Sacrifice isn't for sissy. Sacrifice doesn't go out of their way when a friend is in need. Now, I remember when I first met him, he was a big man. Not just in size, but everything about him was big. His voice, his way of doing things, his singing, his laughter, and his family. There would seem to be a lot of kids, and I really liked one of them. His daughter and I became friends, and then another daughter, and then the sons of the family. They just all became very special in my life. Off and on since the mid-'80s, this man has bumped into my heart. Now, when you meet some people, it's hello. Then there are those people you encounter. Everett was one of those encounters. Through the years, we rubbed shoulders and we laughed a lot. When his wife was on his deathbed, I helped plan the funeral. That is really awkward. It's been something I've done quite a bit, and it never gets to a comfortable place. It's just still awkward. But awkward and love combined is a beautiful thing. That was a special day when the girls and I just sat talking with Joyce and making sure her wishes would be known and carried out. Last year, Everett became ill, and I went to the hospital because that's what you do. Regardless of the circumstances, the chain and the ring came out, and Everett was himself. He had a chain and a ring trick, and he would talk about God, and those around him would try to take the chain and thread it through the ring, and he would talk about God being in the middle of awkward with a chain and a ring. But the moment I won't forget was at a nursing home. I came over to say hi and found him sitting in the chair by the piano, and he was waiting for therapy. He waited a long time because we were playing singing, and they left us doing our thing because everyone was enjoying it. Singing soft? Dynamics? Not Everett. Now remember, I really don't like nursing homes, but I would sneak over to the town and walk back and sit and talk. He loved to sing and made CD for his kids. His daughters asked if I would take the CD of his singing and make it better. I put it on my machine and had the issues solved within minutes, and then that's what cost me. I had an idea. Many of the songs Everett was singing simply with just no music, and he was relatively on key, so I hooked up another machine and added piano background to his singing. It took me a few hours of recording and mixing. It did cost me. But what did I lose? I lost pleasure in myself of loving on someone in a way that would make their heart go, ah. Now that is a skill we need to learn. I think we've been given all we can, and the beauty of the moment was that God gave my heart goosebumps every time Everett would tell me about the people he was giving his CDs to. In the nursing home, he couldn't go out and do things for people. No problem. Everett had people coming into his room every day, and he was Jesus with a CD giving away of his singing. Oh, yes, and that chain of rings. Somewhere along the way, he'd gone to Hardware Hank and bought a bunch of more thick rings and 18 inches of chain. He would put his finger and drape it just so and drop the chain, and it would grab the chain. It was an attention getter, and everybody tried it. Some did it on the first try, and well, others of us still try and fail. But that was his hook. He would talk about Jesus and our relationship with Jesus. And when they left the room, they had a Ziploc baggie with a ring and a chain. That was Everett's way of sharing Jesus. It was as if he had nothing left sitting in a nursing home, but he found a way to multiply the little boy's lunch, if you want to use that term, with a chain and a ring. Knowing how much Everett loved music, God gave the idea for me to bless him one more time and to live that life of loving, serving, giving. Sometimes one thinks 2 steps beyond what's needed. All Everett needed was time and a piano player, and I had both. But I will have nothing left, or letting go of this earth is a tough pill. We tend to cling to life since it's all we know. The unknown is scary. The future beyond where we live is a mystery. We know what Jesus said. We know the promises we have as a believer. John 14:2 gives us that picture. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be. Okay, let's break it down a bit. John's intention isn't that we are going or not going to an address in heaven. It's not so much either that we have a literal house. Us humans think that way because we down here have homes and houses, and it's extremely important. That's really important if you live in the upper Midwest, where the cold air moves in and stays for 5 months and the snow piles are often taller than we are. But John is giving us the heart feel of heaven as being home. It's our Father's house. Now, I loved the house we grew up in. It was home. It was my Father's house. We had a place. We belonged at a big round kitchen in the table in the kitchen. The disciples were still caught up in thinking Jesus was going to set up a kingdom on earth. John was reminding those who would be reading that Jesus' intent, what he said was that he was going to leave them. And when he leaves, he's going to go somewhere that they can be. And not just be, he'll prepare it for them. Well, when someone prepares for me, there's some thought put into who I am, what I like, and what I need. Jesus is doing that. The picture Jesus paints for us is reminding us that when life is over, there's plenty of space for us with him. And as much as I like the song, I Got a Mansion Over the Hilltop, it may not be exactly like that, but it's going to be incredible. The focus of what Jesus was saying is you aren't living forever on earth. And when earth ends, there's something waiting. We all think we're going to live forever. Not many get up in the morning thinking about dying. Perhaps a better chapter title would be, It Ain't Over Till Someone Dies. 2019 taught me many things of life, and ironically, many of them revolved around dying. It's unavoidable, inevitable, and certainly not how we think it'll be. But it will be. Because it's certainty, 100% terminal for all of us. The point in life then becomes, if we lose it all down here, what can we pay forward, invest in, and focus on before it's our time? What I found in this past year is there's something about holding the heart of someone who's close to leaving this earth. It usually doesn't happen in the blink of an eye, but it's all about relationship. Relationships are one of the most beautiful things God uses to teach us to love, serve, and give. And we won't serve and give unless we learn to love. 6 years ago, horses brought us together. They say that's a common thing, horses and kids, especially girls. One thing led to another, and these people just kept invading our lives. And I don't mean like an Asian beetle invasion. It was more like a sneaky spider invasion. Now, something happened, and you can't even pinpoint when it began. But there are the God moments in life when he opens the door and we walk through and we didn't even know it was a doorway. Slowly, this family became a part of ours and our small group and Bible study and church and bonfires and cabin trips. Or perhaps it's easier to say we were just living life together. That's what community is. That's what God intended this walk through to life to be. We simply take one step at a time with someone walking beside us. Sometimes those are close friends. Sometimes those someones become close friends. Now, had I told you 6 years ago how the chapter would end, I would have shied away from reading it. I don't like death and I don't like crying. But it ain't over till someone dies, and we're all dying that. We learned that Mark, the dad, had a brain tumor. It was a slow-growing tumor. I liked Mark. His quick wit and quirky smile won me over. I guess I'm easy to win over. It's been about a year since we gathered around his hospital bed and sang. It's been about a year since I would go in and read the Bible and pray with Mark. It's been about a year since we sat at the counter. I brought him goulash for lunch, and he was eating it as fast as he could shove it in his face, and I just sat and laughed at him. It's been about a year since I sat on the couch and was there just if he needed something. It's been about a year since I slept in a blow-up bed on the floor, leaping up at 3 a.m. to get a Coke for him. It's been about a year since I read the Psalms and praying before we all tried to sleep. It seems like a lifetime ago, but it's only been a year. Sometimes things happen and you can't stop the motion. It's like a rock rolling downhill. We can't stop life to treasure it, and we can't stop death from arriving. In my list of things to do last year, I would have never put down hang with Mark or go study and be there if Mark's needed. Jim didn't have it in his planner, like he even has a planner. But in his planner, he didn't write, go hang with Jesse or Mark so Jesse can go to church. It wasn't on Mark's calendar to celebrate his 44th birthday and the next day die. We don't get a chance to write our life's journey, and even if we did, we wouldn't have written in the way it happened. It ain't over till someone dies. When one lets God teach you how to love, serve, and give, it stretches what you think you're capable of. When God teaches you to love, serve, and give, it isn't going to be comfortable. Loving, serving, and giving takes the things you thought you could count on, turns them upside down in a blender. Never would I have written a script for loving and giving like it turned out, because we think we have a plan. But then God moves. Personally, to tell the truth, I just don't like that kind of stuff. I'm very squeamish about body fluids, and I don't do throwing up well. Okay, to be honest, if someone throws up, I join them. But that's a bit awkward when you're helping care for someone. Now, I would have rather mowed the lawn. I would have preferred to walk the dog and bring a casserole. That seems to be one of those get-out-of-free-jail cards. That would have been easier, but that's not what God was calling us to do. When God moves the heart to love, that action has no strings attached and nothing is off limits. Loving, serving, and doing means more to the one on the receiving end when the heart is willing to be what is needed. No strings attached, no off limits, not even when losing is all this earth is the result and loving till death do us part. Just isn't for married people. It's a relationship of the heart that we can be a part of. So most of the time we offer our help and then put boundaries around our offer. But what if we just opened our arms and didn't expect anything in return except what God put in them? What if we said whatever you need and then stepped back and lived as if you would die loving people with nothing else planned? Letting go of this earth reminds us that it's not living here that matters. It's what we do with our life here that matters. I went into loving and serving our friends with no expectations. I simply needed to be there. I had no definition of there and no expectation of what there may be. And truth to be told, I don't think it's fair for Jesse, Mark, and Nora to do it alone. So I just became there. It was in the middle of the night that God reminded me what being there meant. I was sleeping in Mark's room in an odd position between two chairs in a hospital bed. One doesn't really sleep, one just changes levels of consciousness. I listened for Mark's breathing. I lay waiting for God to talk to me. Talk to me about anything, Lord, just talk. I was willing to hear yes, no, or maybe. I would have loved to hear the angel's wings. I was willing to even listen to a dialogue like Job got. Nothing happened. It was his quiet breathing. His breathing would cease and my heart would stop, and then I'd perch on the side of the chair and look at him. Seemingly in a way that I was bothered, he kept not breathing. About the time I was freaking out, he'd breathe and go back into a normal rhythm. This happened all night. I slept but mostly listened to breathing and God. Forget God speaking loudly or in a whisper. He wasn't speaking at all. He wasn't speaking softly. He wasn't speaking with words, but what I kept hearing was love. Keep loving, keep serving, keep giving. But I wasn't doing anything that merited anything special. I was lying between two chairs, awkwardly trying to rest and listen. For what? I had no clue what I was listening for. But then it dawned on me, loving, serving, and giving has no definition. Loving, serving, and giving is a definition. If it means I'm uncomfortable, caught between awkward and inconvenience, God will be a bridge. Bridge connects things that are too far apart to safely leap. We want to leap because we have control. God puts us on bridges that shake, are missing steps, and often we lose sight of the other side. But it is going to connect us to somewhere. Through life, we learn lessons. If we remember what we've learned, we walk alongside others and let God be God by the way we love, serve, and give, we learn what it means to others. But sometimes we never really know. We walk across a bridge, and once we're across the bridge, we go our separate ways. Other times we get across the bridge and find that in the quest to cross, we lost the hands we were holding to get across. And then there are moments when God just holds your hand in the middle of the bridge and you realize that learning the discipline of loving, serving, giving is a part of every breath you breathe and every beat of your heart. The hand you hold along the way, the heart you touch will leave you with nothing left, and yet your hands are so full you can't keep the blessing from slipping through your fingers.